Welcome back to part 3 and hopefully the conclusion of making a set of Poz Tongs. Now Poz Tongs are a lightweight pair of bolt tongs or V-bit tongs. They are not necessarily better than other bolt tongs or V-bit tongs, and while they are fairly quick to make, they can be kind of fiddly. There are a lot of little details you have to do just right to get these to come out just right. So the video process is actually taking considerably longer than it really takes to make one. I've been working on 3 sets of these throughout the video, and I suspect in the long run that's going to end up being about 4 hours worth of actual work, not including video production issues, moving cameras around, everything like that. So they aren't a bad pair of tongs to make. This video may make them seem a lot harder than they really are. I think they're worth using. They are my favorite tongs for small round stock and square stock for making hooks, things like that. 1/4 inch round, 3/8 round, 1/4 square, 3/8 square, things like that. These are ideal for. Once you get up to around 1/2 inch and bigger, I think regular bolt jaw tongs really seem to be a little bit better. They're a little more heavy duty, but you can certainly upscale this, use heavier material, and use the same concept to make bigger tongs. So if you've been following along with the previous 2 videos, you should have 2 halves of a pair of tongs, 2 tong halves that have been shaped, have the jaws done, and there's a V-bit running down the center of the jaws that needs to be cleaned up when we're all done. The next thing to do is actually going to be to assemble these. But looking at my pair here, I can see that this curve has been deformed a little bit through hammering and working on it. And I'm going to clean that up just a little bit. Purely aesthetic, it doesn't really matter. As long as the jaws are going to come together right. This curve isn't that big a deal, but I'd like it to be nice and round. So I'm going to take a round file and I'm going to clean that up real quick, make them look good. It's also a good time to check for any other sharp spots, snags, funny little lumps, bumps that'll make them either unpleasant or uncomfortable to use. So take a little bit of time, go over your blanks, make sure they're ready to go, and then we'll assemble them. So it's really just this area in here that just doesn't look quite as nice as it could. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit with this big round file. Make sure there's no sharp edges. I think that looks considerably better and worth that little bit of extra effort. I also have a little bit of mushrooming right here that's going to affect them in use, as well as makes a little sharp edge. So I just want to take that off. This is someplace you can use various grinders and other things if you need to, but there's nothing wrong with filing. So now this is ready to assemble. So with all of the rough spots cleaned up, it is time to drill our holes. Now you could certainly punch holes in this if you would prefer, but I think my preference is going to be to drill, just to get a nice accurate hole in these. I think I'm going to go right about there. Kind of judge this based on what size stock you're going to want to use and exactly where your hole's going to want to go. You can't move it that far over, but you do have a little bit of leeway here. I'm going to drill one of them first, and I'm going to use a 5/16 rivet. Then use that first hole as a guide for my second hole. And drill that. So we should have 2 matching holes. I took a little bit of time and I countersunk this. that relieves the edge and means you're less likely to shear your rivet off in use. If that is good and sharp, you're actually making a little rod shear, and you could cut your rivet. I'm going to use a 5/16 round head rivet because I've got some of them. This one is 1 inch long. And we're going to go rivet that together. So I've got a rivet set here that fits my 5/16 rivet head and the matching top set. I'm going to go ahead and put the rivet in the tongs. I think it's easiest to just do it this way, and then heat the end of the rivet with a torch. We'll start setting it with a hammer, then we'll finish it with the top rivet setter. Now before we set our rivet, let's think about what hand you're going to use these tongs in, and review the concept of left-handed tongs versus right-handed tongs. Now a lot of V-bit tongs and a lot of modern tongs have little offsets so the tong handles sit perfectly in line with each other, and left and right hand ceases to be quite as important an issue. But when you're making your own tongs, you're probably better off thinking about left-handed tongs versus right-handed tongs. So if you don't get those offsets perfect, the tongs will be more comfortable in use. So what do I mean by left-handed or right-handed? Well, I am a right-handed blacksmith. I hold my hammer in my right hand. I hold my tongs in my left hand, so I want left-handed tongs. And what makes these left-handed versus right-handed is which side the reins are on, which one is up here. So you can see in this pair of tongs, well, look at it right here. If I just balance that on the anvil and let go, because this top rein is on the left side, it wants to fall left. That means in use, it wants to lay in my hand. In my right hand, it wants to fall away from my grip. And that means it would be less convenient to use in my right hand. You can, but it's not as nice. So it's way better if the jaw on the left is the one that is on the, or the tong rein on the left is the one that is on top, and then they roll into your hand. And these can be assembled either way. So whether you're right-handed or left-handed, we haven't gone too far. So here, this top jaw, or top rein, I should say, is on my left side. If I switch sides with these, then this becomes a right-handed pair of tongs. So I want to make sure when I set my rivet, because I use left-handed tongs as a right-handed smith, that I put it in this way and I get nice left-handed tongs. You can generally set a 1/4 inch rivet cold, but I think when it gets up to 5/16 and bigger, way better to do them hot. And you could heat this up in the forge, that's certainly an option. Start that with a hammer and finish it with the rivet set. So that is an assembled pair of tongs. That rivet could have been just a hair longer. I didn't get a great big head, but that's okay. But let's take a look at that. Nothing lines up. That's pretty miserable right there. So we need to fix that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up and work the jaw a little bit so that they work smoothly, although that's close to enough space. Then we're going to deal with getting that all back in line. So by heating this up, we can loosen that rivet some and get these to work nice and smooth. And we'll probably have to do that more than once, but just to be sure. Now if your reins need to pass each other here, this is a chance to do a little bit of work on that as well. Which is why getting rid of all the little sharp spots is important. See, I've got a little burr there, so I'm going to have to file or rasp that off to get these to close better, but they already close better than they did. Just work that until they cool off. The next thing we need to do is straighten everything out, and we're going to go to the vise for that. Now for this step, you need one more highly specialized tool, and that is a piece of ideally 1/2 inch round bar. You can probably get by with 3/8 or something, but since we folded it 1/2 inch, this should be perfect. Oh, and eventually you'll need a sample of the material you're going to hold in the tongs. In this case, I'm making it for 3/8 square or round, so we'll use 3/8 square to set our size. So we're going to just put this in with the reins down here, about evenly spaced between the top of the jaw and the reins, and clamp that in the vise. That puts a real twist in here. You put this bar in, you can adjust it. Now the jaws are off, all cattywampus there. Hopefully you know what cattywampus means. But we can hold the bar in and make some adjustments. Talk too much, we'll need to get it hot again. But this is also a good time to work the jaw a little bit more to make sure it opens. Now I have run into a little bit of a problem here because my tong reins are kind of on the wide side. They are going to bump into each other and not work as well as I would like. So I'm going to straighten that out. We're going to have to deal with that as a separate little issue here. Like I say, sometimes these things can be really fiddly, and you just have to work with them until they aren't so fiddly. So that's going to work better there. So I need to not let these bend down here, even though typically that's the way this style of tongs is done. So I've quenched the reins on these so they won't twist as much down there. And then I can just work on the jaw part here. And it's really pretty close. You want to make sure you don't collapse your little V-bit, so work on the back jaw. My hand's in the way, isn't it, when you do this. And that's getting much closer to what we want. Now, in hindsight, if I'd moved my rivet over a little bit, that would create a gap between the top of the reins, and this would not be as problematic as it's being. So I'm going to clamp this jaw up lightly. I don't want to crush my V-bit. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do now to straighten out the reins. Make sure everything looks like it's nice and in line. Then we'll do the final sizing of them. I'm also going to tighten my rivet. It's gotten just a little bit loose with all this manipulation. And that's not a big deal. Now take your little piece of steel and mark which end is going to be the cold end. So every time you pick it up by that end instead of the end you're using to size the tongs with. So we're going to put the end that should be hot in there, and you'll notice this doesn't fit. So now it's just a matter of making little adjustments. Trying not to squeeze the reins together too much because they need to spread to fit properly in use. And now you may need to work this just a little bit here. This gets a little bit difficult trying to get these V-notches just perfect, but it can be done. So that is pretty much it. That went a lot smoother than I thought it might. I think we're going to do that one more time just to be sure. I quenched the reins on these between heats so I can hold on to them comfortably. I'm really pretty darn happy with that. I would like the reins to spread just a little bit further. And to do that, I'm going to put our stock sample in here. Just very lightly hold it in the vise. And spread the reins out just a little bit. And that's much better. I'm going to give those one last little heat and make sure the jaws open and close smoothly. It's a good time to give it a wire brushing and clean it up a little bit. And I'm also going to go put my touch mark on one side and mark 3/8 on the other side. course, there's nothing that says you have to touch mark these, but I think it's a nice touch to sign your work, even your tools, if you've got a touch mark. And it is also very nice to be able to know what pair of tongs they are without having to try every pair on the stock. So I'm going to mark that with a 3. And an 8. And of course, if you're in metric, make it fit your metric bar and mark it whatever you made the tongs to fit. Then I'm going to put just a little cross so people, or a little hash mark so people know it's a fraction. Need to make a tool rack for over here by the treadle hammer. Stacking stuff up here means it just falls off too easy. Now this is a completely functional set of tongs. It holds 3/8 square bar wonderfully. It holds 3/8 round bar wonderfully. Great pair of tongs just the way they are, but there's something we can do to them to make them just ever so slightly more useful, and that is to file a cross notch in here so they hold material crossways if you're upsetting or something like that. And I like my cross notch pretty close to the end on these, so I'm just going to come in with a square file. And I want to file about to the bottom of the existing V-groove. If you go deeper, this may not fit right. So right there. Then I'm going to lightly squeeze just to create a mark opposite that on the other jaw. And I should be able to turn that over and find my mark, and I can. Then file the corresponding notch. And that should make these much more useful. They'll now hold material very solidly crossways. Might be able to make that just a hair deeper. Very solid with square bar. I think I'm going to go just a hair deeper. Looks like it would fit. Don't get carried away though. You can always go deeper. You can always go deeper, but it's hard to put material back in. So that holds the round bar much better, so I'm good and happy with that. Still holds the square bar very good. And these will also hold flat material of some size. I never design them to hold flat because they're just not really what I use them for, but there's probably some usefulness holding certain flat sizes. This is about 3/16 of an inch, which of course is a size I don't use very often. By the way, if you've been wondering what the dull roar is in the background, it's not another forge, it's my little propane heater that really helps heat this little area right by the vise and the drill press and workbench. I'd use the wood stove, but I don't have enough wood cut and split to worry about it today. So that is it for our pair of Poz tongs. Make these in specific sizes to fit the size material you use. I like them in 1/4, 3/8, occasionally in 1/2 inch. Once I get over 1/2 inch, I tend to use a different style of tongs, although there's no reason you can't upscale these for 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, things like that. But they're a very useful pair of tongs. They're one of my favorites for working small materials. I use them day in and day out. I frequently use them for holding small punches and things under the treadle hammer. Extremely useful. Like I say, one of my favorites. So for those of you who've been asking, that's all I know about Poz tongs. Well, not quite. I will admit that usually I cheat. Years ago at a blacksmith's estate sale, one of the local guys who had passed away, he had previously had blanks cut. And these are exactly what I bought at that estate sale. And I bought a few dozen pairs of these. So most of the Poz Tongs that I've made weren't made from scratch like these were. They were made from these blanks, and it goes a little bit faster. Now, I don't know anybody cutting exactly this blank. Ken's Custom Iron cuts a V-bit tong that's very similar, but it's not quite exactly the same pair of tongs. So if you wanted to make your own pattern and hire a plasma cutter or a laser cutter to cut these out of 1/4 inch or 5/16 material, you could make blanks. But if you're only doing 1 or 2 pair, it's way cheaper to just go ahead and forge them out than it is to pay to have blanks cut. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Then feel free to stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends, but then make time in your day to get out to your shop. Make sure you do your homework and finish your set of tongs. I hope to see lots of versions of these on the Facebook page in the coming weeks. But if you're not ready to make tongs, if you've got something else in mind, just make whatever you need to make in your shop. Enjoy your time in the shop. It's precious time, but do it safely. Wear your safety glasses, and we'll see you for the next one. If you would like to support Black Bear Forge financially, there are links in the video descriptions for both PayPal and Patreon. Those are merely donations. The content is free and will remain free.